Hello everyone, welcome in. A little bit of an earlier start than usual. I mean, not time-wise, but intro-wise. Let's just get right into it. I got my cup of tea. Feeling good. Feeling fresh. Also got a fresh haircut, which could probably use some styling now that I've just taken a shower, but here we are. Hope everyone's having a good one. Lighting is a little bit off today as well because we have some really bright sunlight coming in, but I sort of don't want to mess with that, so should brighten my key light instead. How's everyone doing? How's your week? Hope it's going well. Where's my control center thing? There we go. What if we do... It's thinking about it. It's taking its time. No accessory found. Oh, good. Well, I haven't connected my key light for a little while, so... Either way, I'm here. Yeah, hopefully you can see me. Hi. The sun is actually very low, yes. It'll probably go away in the next, hour, so that's fine. Here we are. So I have a couple of things I want to do on this stream to start off with. We're going to go on Empires. We're going to do some landscaping, some pretty casual landscaping, but I want to try and figure out the footprint of where this castle is going to be that I'm going to be building. But first of all, I want to give you all an update on David, or an up-David, as I've decided to call it. Because I feel like this project has been occupying me lately, and I want to show you folks what I've been up to. So I think we are now at the point where this thing can go into production and we can make a tutorial about it. I've been AFK in this world, waiting for some stuff to happen, and some stuff has been happening while I ate my lunch and got a haircut. So, over here, this is the latest iteration of David so far. This is David 6, I guess. This is multiple layers of the more automatic approach to the copper aging factory. We have basically the first 2 layers, but not the top layer, all set up at this stage. And we've even got to the point where this side of the room has, this quadrant of the room has returned 3 full modules of copper. When that reaches 4, it should return that copper to this central platform automatically, and I'm basically just waiting for that to happen as a proof of concept. I wanted to test this under normal conditions, by which I mean like random tick speed of 3, making sure that we're not like accelerating or decelerating the tick speed so that all of the copper is aging at the normal rate and it's not going to trip itself up returning any of this stuff. I presume I could do that by tick warping as well, but I don't really know how to use carpet, so that's probably the next stage in developing anything else like this ever again. So basically we're just going to hang out until that happens, which might take a little while, but the whole system is set up so that once 4 of these modules return all of their copper, because the flying machines can only handle 8 blocks at a time when they're pushing, that means we can't have it return more than 8 rows of copper. So we have 6. Each module outputs 2 rows. Those have all been lined up, ready to be returned to this platform. We just got to wait for that to happen, basically. And then this light will turn on to indicate that that half of the platform is full. Alternatively, it could happen on any of the other quadrants of the room, just in case one of these lines doesn't end up returning. But this central chunk here, around these andesite blocks, is the chunk in which we have to AFK for this entire room to age copper, basically. And I say room, it's not like it's enclosed in walls or anything. But here we are. Anathra, thank you for the 100 bits. Fazoo, thank you for the 28 months. The John B with the 7. Cobblestone B gifting 5 subs. Thank you so much for gifting those 5 subs to the community. Evanitter, thank you so much for the 2 months as well. And Xwitchoria with the Prime sub. Thank you for the Prime sub. Very kind of you. When I do the tutorial, am I going to do a block by block, or am I going to explain how each component works? Trying to do a bit of both, yeah. Elbaska, thank you for the 10 months. Welcome back. So I'm going to explain the concept, first of all, why you want to have some automatic way of spacing out copper so that it can age quickly. I'm going to explain why I'm not just doing this with some kind of big piston feed tape, because that just leaves a lot of copper lying around, not aging the fastest it possibly can. Although I think if you place copper blocks 5 blocks apart, that's the fastest they can possibly go. Looks like one of our lines is returning over there, collecting all of the aged copper as it goes. You can just about see the flying machine moving. It'll be more obvious in a second. There it is, moving like an NPC in the new Pokemon game, but that's just the nature of how far away these things are when they have to render. Oh, we also have a return on the top row up here. Very nice. Very cool. I'm only going to be able to catch that stuff if I'm looking in the general direction at the time. But yeah, that is currently all returning and looping back around, so it can be picked up by the flying machine as it goes. And that's sent a signal down to the end there where it should have counted that one of these modules has returned. It's all going very well. Magpie Live, thank you for the 17. Zuka with the 9 months. Castle Lioness, thank you for the 28. Because My Cat has gifted a sub, thank you so much for that. Ginger, thank you for the 100 bits. Dan with the 32 months. Vazinok, thank you for the 2 months. It's Cryo with the Prime sub. Trissy with the... or Tricky, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. A brand new sub to the channel. Magoo, thank you for the 6 months. Casey with the 100 bits. And Elkaneo Cosmico, thank you for the 35. Well, so yeah, we're going to be talking about effectively the evolution of this contraption, and through learning about the process that I went through to build it, we'll learn, first of all, how to create one of those modules that I sort of invented for Empire Season 1, and then we'll go through some of the iterations and how we eventually came to the setup we have now, which is automatic distribution and collection. That's the plan, at least. I genuinely don't know how long this is going to take, because copper aging is obviously like a long and random process. Oh, we have another return coming in over there. Very nice. And the problem that you have to deal with when it comes to this stuff is the randomness, right? Is the fact that different blocks of copper can age at rapidly different rates. And so you end up with a few occasions on which things can go wrong, and the randomness of things can coincide in such a way that trips up the machine. And so one of the things I wanted to test by doing this is there going to be a situation... Another return in there, very nice. Is there going to be a situation in which one of our flying machines collides with one of the other ones? Like, if this machine comes through, is it going to pick up the flying machine that's bringing the copper in? Are those two going to intersect in some way. And I am hopeful that that is not going to happen, because I think this one is too high up. But I do want to just make sure that nothing weird like that is potentially going to happen. Or if it does, then I think the only thing that can happen is that if a flying machine is unloading the aged copper here whilst this thing is coming back, it might stop midway down. And the machine might break apart at that stage, but I'm crossing my fingers that that doesn't happen. How big are the batches? Is there a minimum amount of copper you need to put in? One will return coming in over here. I think the best way of using this version of the contraption, like the way I have it set up, is for it to have basically 72 copper at a time. The minimum amount I would ideally put into these modules is like 18, because that's a full row of copper aging at that point. You could, in theory, build it smaller, but I don't recommend doing that. At least not with the design I've figured out here. We've got another one returning there. By the way, this entire thing, if you built these 3 layers, you filled the entire thing up, that's one full shulker box of copper, is all aging in this contraption. So each floor of this is exactly one full row of a chest in full stacks of copper. Basically, it's 9 stacks of copper per floor. And each of these is spaced 12 blocks apart vertically. And so you can imagine, like, if you multiply that, and if you had like 30 floors of this, you'd basically be able to age 10 shulker boxes of copper blocks all in a row. How does it deal with copper aging before it's fully loaded? That is an incredibly rare thing to happen, because the loading system is fairly fast, and up until basically the last stage where the final block of copper gets loaded into the furthest machine away, it's always within a couple of blocks of another block of copper, which usually means that it will fail to age if the game tries to age it, basically. And it is possible, it's more likely, if anything, that one of the copper blocks chooses to age twice within the space of 4 game ticks, which is faster than the observer would detect it changing and be able to output a pulse to the counter. But that is resolved by just periodically checking the machine. If it feels like one of the rows just, for whatever reason, hasn't been returned, you go over there, you press a button on that, and it advances the counter by 1, and then the machine will eject it. So if you end up with an aged block of copper that's still stuck in the machine, then that's how you deal with that problem. And I might hang around in this creative world where I've got the whole thing built for a little while longer on the stream today. Because I don't have huge plans for what I'm doing for the landscaping stuff on Empires. I vaguely want to start something, but it's all going to be fairly improvised. And so I'm kind of more inclined to stick around here and see what happens with this, and see if we can encounter any like fringe scenarios, or if the whole thing is just going to tick over. Yeah, the tutorial is going to be coming very soon. I'm hoping to get it done before I leave for the United States, which means I'll try and get it done like before next Thursday, and then I don't know if it'll post next Thursday, because I do want some videos to go up while I'm away, but I'm going to be in the US for a couple of weeks, so. Jack's Gadget Girl, thank you for the 2 years. Nikki, thanks so much for the 6 month stream. 96 with the 101 bits. Appreciate you all. Thanks so much for the hype train. Why the trip to the States? My partner's family is from there. My partner is from there, so I go with them, and we go and hang out with family, and it's basically like Christmas in January for us, because we don't often get the opportunity to go back to California. So this line now has 3 rows as well. So does this one. And like any one of these lower modules down here could actually return their copper at any time, apart from this one. There's one up here, there's one there, but these were all loaded like later, so it's really a race between that one, and that one now. This one over here, I've actually had to make some weird changes to the loading mechanism, which I'll talk about in a second. Is this the fully automatic version? Basically, yes. It's never going to be fully automatic because, of course, it requires a player to place and break the blocks. Breaking the blocks could be done with TNT, but there are a couple of issues with that, which I will talk about a little bit more in a second and potentially address in the video as well. Like, some people who are smarter than I am, and yes, I recognize that saying smarter than I am surrounded by all of this redstone seems kind of silly, but there are definitely a lot more people who are very talented with redstone than I am. I think you could set it up so that it put all of the copper in a situation where you could explode it with TNT. I have not done that, and mainly because I want to keep the redstone here relatively achievable and not too messy. Like, I like the elegance of this whole thing. I like the fact that it's just a set of repeating mechanisms and that a lot of it is fairly sensible, regardless of what it looks like it might be. And so, yeah, adding the TNT in there, like, stuff gets messy with TNT, and you're also trying to condense down, basically, 8 rows of 9 blocks into an area that can be exploded by TNT, and do that in a way that feels elegant is difficult for me to figure out. What about a timer that's triggered after all but one module is kicked out that triggers the remaining module to be ejected and reset? The problem is, how do you send a signal to that specific module? The answer to that is you send a signal to every possible module in the row, which means wiring up 18 more redstone lines to every single module in each of these rows. And then also, what constitutes a sensible timer? Like, how do you send the signal back to all of those in order to send the signal back down the line to the one that hasn't reset? Like, it's just a little excessive for something that's likely to be a very fringe scenario, whether or not it happens. And honestly, like, just going in and pressing a button for the player is potentially a better solution until you get to a sort of scale that is more likely to be unobtainable by a player anyway. Tia, thank you for the 52 months. Welcome in. What would Psycraft do? Psycraft would do something completely different to this, because I'm pretty sure Ilmango and a few other people from Psycraft have already kind of like rejected ideas like this on the grounds of there being margin for error with the observer not being able to detect copper aging twice in quick succession. So this is not the kind of design they would build. I'm pretty sure they build something like Cubic Meters Farm, where you effectively keep the entire thing on a piston feed tape, but you space out the copper blocks using, I think, powder snow or something like that. Obviously, that requires collecting a lot of powder snow in survival, which I know a lot of people aren't too keen on doing. We can't all be Cub fan. But yeah, there's theoretical copper machines out there, and there's some stuff that people could and would build, but I wanted to just follow through with the ideas that I had initially. I've been here for an long while. I know. There are a few people who've been here for an long while now, and it makes me feel old. Yes, this is a copper oxidizer. It effectively just collects and spreads out copper 4 blocks apart, counts when it ages, returns it to this area, and then once 4 modules of it have been returned, this flying machine should sweep through and bring it all back to this central platform. I'm basically waiting around to see whether it does that or not, because I had some teething problems with the redstone for effectively telling it, yes, this module has returned, this module has returned, this module has returned. So I'm waiting to see whether that happens consistently or not. How much copper do we have in the machine? This is about 2/3 of a shulker box. In fact, it's exactly 2/3 of a shulker box. Meaning that if we filled up this top row as well, this top layer doesn't have anything in it right now, that would be an entire single chest of copper. Increase random tick speed? No, because the problem with that is when you increase random tick speed, more of these are going to be finishing and returning the copper at once, but the flying machine is still going to move at the same speed. And the problem with that is that the flying machine can only pick up 4 modules at a time, which is what it's programmed to do. And if it picks up more than 4 modules at a time, it breaks, because the flying machines have a piston push limit of 8 blocks. There is potentially a way we could increase that to 12, but I don't see the need, personally. And it also means making the flying machine more complicated and changing the spacing of some stuff, and at this point I don't really want to commit to that. What are the redstone lamp bars for at the end? They are for returning the flying machines. So one of the things the flying machines can do, they could be note blocks as well, in theory. But flying machines will return there because they have observers, basically starting them moving in a different direction. Those, like, flash once to tell the flying machine to move again, and it hopefully does. How big is it? It's like a football field. It's, this is the entire... if you fly up into the air, this is basically the entire radius in which random ticks can take place. It's been a little bit adjusted at the edges because I turned random tick speed back on. But a cool way of doing this, if you're in a flat world like this, is to make the entire flat world out of dirt instead of grass. And then place one grass block. Of course, that one returns now. That's 3 on this side as well. You place one grass block down here, and then you turn the random tick speed up to like 30,000, and it basically fills up the entire area that you can see within random tick range with grass. But it will do that based on chunks, because that's how random tick radius works. And so that's what I've been using basically for the footprint of this contraption, and knowing where I can place copper blocks that will still age via random tick. The first time you were in, Zloy banned me because he didn't know how to time me out while we were talking smack back and forth. Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds like something he would do. I'm pretty sure most mods have had a day like that, though. So we have 3 on each of the lower quadrants now. And we have a couple coming in up here as well. Is this David 6? Yes, this is David 6. Well, it feels like there have been multiple iterations just while I've been redoing this in testing. But I feel like it will only really be David 6 if I build it in survival. Which, by the way, the amount of materials required to do this in survival is quite a lot. Like, if you want to build one layer of this, it is more than a shulker box of observers for a start. It's a lot of pistons, obviously, because there are 2 sticky pistons in each of the sections of the copper aging modules, and then obviously you've got pistons in the flying machines and collecting stuff from the flying machines, returning stuff to the flying machines. It's a lot. But yeah, that's where we're at with this. But yeah, I'm planning on returning to Survival Guide Season 2 and building this. Which is obviously going to require me to build a copper farm, probably based on drowned reinforcements. A raid farm so that we can get enough emeralds to buy the redstone from villagers and get some redstone in the process. I might also build a witch farm, just so we can test basically the output of a witch farm versus a raid farm versus just buying redstone from cleric villagers versus mining for redstone, and do like a side-by-side comparison of each of those. Azuma would love to see this. I think he's seen some of it. Like, he has been in my chat a couple of times to look at the process. I got more stuff planned with Azuma later in the year, actually. You guys are going to like it. But yeah, I don't know if Azuma's up for building this expansion for David, because it will require a lot more digging out of his base on Hermitcraft. So, yeah, there's a lot. And honestly, like, these modules are so much more spaced apart than the ones we built in Azuma's base that you'd need to expand it pretty thoroughly. He'd need to take down half of the machine just to get the other half rebuilt somewhere else. Somehow nonsense on Respawn has to happen in the downtime, and I thought I was busy. I mean, yeah, I don't know how much time I have to play Respawn, unfortunately, because I've got so much content to make before I go away. But I will try and get on there where I can. I have one less life than I used to, because Bruno stole one of my lives on stream the other day. Which is fair, because I think he doesn't have any left now, so... FRD Dot, thanks so much for the 2 months. And Miwin says, overwhelming with the 19 months. It's whelming at this point. Like, I've got to the point now where I understand it. How many modules is this, David? It's 16 on each... Wait, hang on. No, it's 8 on each quadrant, so 32 per floor, so 96 total for this one. And obviously, like, you can expand this upwards infinitely. So you could multiply this vertically as much as you wanted. But at that point, obviously, you get into the issue of, like, A, when am I going to need this much copper ever in my life? And B, like, the maintenance, the actual human effort required to replace all of the copper and break it and everything. Like, the fact that you can't automate inputs beyond what I've already done. Would you build it underground or above ground? I think this version would be above ground, but then if I wanted to, I could just dig out the next 12 blocks and build another layer under that and just keep building it as I go down. That's the idea. But I'd like to have it on the surface because I'd like to be able to see it. My current copper aging machine on Survival Guide is built underneath my dripstone cave base. But I think this I would just want to, like, flatten out a large area for. When will I start landscaping? Once this has done a couple of things. Scalability of upkeep gets bad? Yes. That's the main reason that having... Oh, we have a winner. We have a winner. Now we need to make sure that this does what it's supposed to do. I don't think any of the others are coming in, which means it's going to be this one. And we've got to pray. We've got to cross our fingers and hope that none of the remaining rows over here are going to return in the meantime. Because if they do, that's where we run into problems. But this should fold over on itself like all of the other ones have done. Yeah, that would potentially... Yep, there it goes. There it goes. So as soon as 4 of these modules have returned all of their aged copper, this flying machine sweeps through and it delivers all the copper to this platform. Oh, and we have another winner. Yes, another one's doing it as well. Oh, that's incredible. This is the first time I've let it do this naturally instead of just simulating it. And that's magic. So these two are going to turn up at exactly the same time. More or less. That's going to drop off the copper there. It's going to return. It's going to send a signal down there to reset that. Oh, you beauty. Drop it off. And off it goes. All of those reset down the line. Perfect. Oh, it's so good. And those happened at exactly the same time, which is hilarious and so good. What happens if one returns while it's collecting them all? That's the problem. But I honestly don't think we're going to run into that issue too often. Because this has... I'm not sure quite how long it has to travel. It's about 100 blocks or so back to the central part here and then back over there. Maybe a little bit less, maybe 80 blocks. And these have a similar distance to travel. So, like, the likelihood is that if one of them starts at the same time as the other one, they just miss each other as they cross over. And honestly, the worst thing that can happen is they collide and then you have to rebuild 2 flying machines. But that's, you know, if it happens, it happens. And there's not really a way to failsafe against it without doing a lot more redstone. So I'm effectively banking on that not being the case. But the fact is, you eliminate 4 of the possibilities of it doing that just by the fact that there are 4 of them already returned. I'm sure building this in Bedrock would be much more difficult due to redstone differences. Oh, it would. Yeah, absolutely it would. So now that these 2 lamps are lit, we basically have to come through and break all of this copper, which I'm probably going to do using a fill command. But the idea is that now, with that platform returned, the player would have to be here and break it. Alternatively, we would figure out some kind of method of destroying it all with TNT. But I don't really know how to do that and still effectively unload the entire flying machine. Because the problem is, right, we're at our piston push limit when we're returning 4 modules of it right away. So if we had even like a couple of blocks left around here, we would not be able to have the flying machine return anything. If I put some pistons along here, then those pistons end up getting attached to the slime and honey blocks and pulled back down there with the flying machine. So we couldn't just push everything downwards in like a pad of pistons, unfortunately. Unless the pistons could stay active for the entire duration of the flying machine arriving here, these lamps lighting up, and then the flying machine leaving again. Instead of using a flying machine, using a block conveyor would solve the piston block limit problem. Yes, but the problem is you've got to do that across such a large area that it becomes prohibitively expensive. Like, to my mind, there isn't a way of doing this that isn't either very expensive or potentially prone to breaking. Is there anything you can piston push copper onto which would force it to break? No, nothing does that. The only thing that you can break blocks with that's not a player is TNT. The alternative would be setting it up so that this entire, like, pad of copper could be pushed in front of a player, and a player just holds down left click and breaks it. But I don't know. I don't see a way of doing that, which again doesn't needlessly complicate this system. But obviously, like, the desirable quality of this is for it to be AFKable. But I don't really know how I can do that. As far as breaking stuff. You certainly can't do it in terms of placing blocks. When you build this in survival, how are you going to get to each warped wood platform? I mean, I'd build extra stuff around it. Like, I would build a path that leads over here to this platform so we could load more copper into the machine. I'd build a path back to this one, and then you'd have to mark out this central chunk because this is where you need to stand to age all of the copper at once. But I'm not going to be, like, relying on elytra and parkour and everything. Like, I'm going to build some sort of elevator between floors, maybe a water elevator, maybe just scaffolding, ladders, whatever. But yeah, the thing I'm happiest about right now is that half of the copper just returned with, like, no issues. Because the way this works is that when the flying machines return, and when this system here starts effectively pushing the copper off the flying machine and getting it ready for collection by the second set of flying machines, that sends a signal to this, which sends a signal down the line there to a timer, which is basically counting how many of those modules return, and then on 4, it activates the flying machine. After a short delay, to account for the fact that this last row down here is very close to the flying machine, so there's a few repeaters in there set to maximum ticks. Otherwise, this could potentially activate before this machine here is done unloading. But the timing on that is really precise. Like, it's quite fast. And then when the flying machine gets down here and unloads, the thing that triggers this piston also triggers all of those pistons all the way down the line to reset this mechanism. But then that mechanism should only be activated again when another set of copper gets returned. So it can only count up to 4, and then the whole system gets reset, including the counter at the end there, when the copper returns to this spot. Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot. But then when the remaining lines return, I think the only way that could potentially present a problem is if multiple of these lines return at the same time. And again, the likelihood of that, considering we're working with random ticks and everything, and copper ages fairly slowly, is so slim that I don't think it's ever really going to present an issue. And if it does, it's like a small amount of work to correct. It's like 5 minutes. All right, this one's going to activate in just a second. Yep, that's flying on down. Very good. The other fun thing about this is that there are 2 flying machines that are directly next to each other, so you've got to build this in a very specific pattern with honey blocks here and slime blocks next to them. Otherwise, that flying machine gets stuck to that one and they just start pulling each other apart. Which is not ideal. In a future SMP, David could be the centerpiece to your base. I mean, it could be, but I'd have to leave a heck of a giant space in the middle of my base in order to do that. Also, what SMP? I don't want to do copper 3 seasons in a row on Empires. But anyway, now this is returned. We come through and we gather all of this. What are the dimensions of this? I can tell you in just a second. If I load up the schematic for David 6, it's big. Is there a way I can get the full dimensions of it from this? I guess not. Alright, ignore that, let's do that a different way. So it's like there, basically. That's the side wall of it. Shows dimensions in Litematica schematic browser. Oh, cool, okay. 179 by 222, 12 blocks high. There you go. It's a big boy. Yeah, the idea is that we're having to build inside of the random tick radius, but I wanted it to be basically as much of this as we could fit inside the random tick radius. So it is quite large. Why don't you use a piston pad to push up all but the closest line of copper and have the flying machine push it into position when it returns? Because that involves adding another 72 pistons. Because it's returning an 8 block by 9 block long like area of copper. So piston pads and stuff like that are just going to get like... it's like building another one of these at a time. It's just like extra expense that I want to avoid. If anything, I would want to have a piston feed tape push it all like downwards. If you're AFK and 4 sets have already returned, the other 4 in the same module are ready to be returned, would the return mechanism break because there are already blocks on the platform? Yes. Which is one of the things that I want to try and figure out, but at this point it adds enough time to me building this thing that I won't be able to get the tutorial out in time. And I expect people would come up with their own solutions to that, so I'm kind of happy for people to figure out how the braking thing works. Add a Shrieker to signal when the user needs to come break blocks. Unfortunately, Shriekers are only activated by player activity or mobs. And so, for a Shrieker to do anything, you would basically have to... Like, I don't think a mob would even do it, would it? Like, if I put down a Skulk Shrieker and just drop a zombie on it, is that going to do the same thing? Oh, I guess I'm on peaceful, huh? Like, mobs don't even trigger Shriekers. Like, they're only triggered by player activity. Congratulations to me getting Monster Hunter in this world. Maybe a TNT blast chamber. Yeah, the problem is, like, where do you put a TNT blast chamber? How do you get them into an optimal configuration to destroy them? How do you get all of the blocks in there? Because the point is to break all of the blocks at once. They all have to be cleared off this platform, otherwise anything returning from the rest of the machine is going to stop the flying machine in its tracks. Don't pistons work? Pistons work very well, but, like, what arrangement of pistons? Like, just saying throw some pistons at it is not going to solve the problem. The problem is you need to arrange it in a certain way. The thing is, the blocks hang off the bottom of the flying machines when they return like this, and there's good reasons for that, because if the flying machine is any lower, it starts picking up these walls and dragging them along with the flying machine. Basically, this row of blocks has to be down here in order for it to not break all of the other mechanisms along these sides. You meant with the Shrieker? The pistons activate Shriekers? Have they ever done that? I mean, like, if you set up a Skulk sensor, like, that's going to notice when a player does something nearby. So that's going to do the same thing, but, like, it's not going to detect anything other than player action as something that's going to trip a Skulk Shrieker. Like, the player has to actively be involved in doing something for the Shrieker to do stuff. Keep pushing into the middle with a TNT Jeeper running. But yeah, but pushing into the middle only takes you up to here, and then the flying machine has to return. And if you destroy stuff in the middle here, then it's going to destroy some of the redstone components around it. The thing is, like, in order to push anything through here at this point, the flying machine needs to be out of the way, otherwise it's going to pull all of those pistons back with it. Like, once I've given everybody the schematics and world downloads for this, like, feel free to try and implement something, but there are enough moving parts here that a lot of these suggestions are too general. Like, they're not going to work for the specific scenarios that make this machine work the way it does. Observer opening a trapdoor can be detected by a Skulk sensor. Yes, but those can't then trigger Skulk Shriekers. Like, Skulk sensors will detect any sound that happen around them, but they won't activate a Shrieker unless the action was performed by a player. Like, if I wanted a sound-based cue for this, I would just hook this up to, like, once the copper block came in here, like, that could activate, let's say, a sticky piston, which could activate an observer clock, like this, which could activate a village bell. And then, if I built this the right way around, like that could let you know that the copper is back. But I don't necessarily want sound-based cues because I'm okay with just sitting around the platform, the contraption and babysitting it, right? Like, it's possible to have stuff like that, sure. Do I want it that way personally? No. Any idea what's the minimum build for this? Can I make 4 modules and still have the load and unload? You could, yeah. You could easily cut it down to... Where would that be, like, here? Basically. And you could just shorten this, and then, yeah, it could load and unload at that point without even worrying about potentially colliding with the other flying machines. The cool part about this is that the second unload of this mechanism is a lot safer, because then there's no way anything returning from that end of the room is going to collide with the flying machine as it makes its way down this way. I was having another, if the platform is clear, then push back, else don't. Yeah, I mean, there's potentially room for something like that. So, like, once this activates, basically lock one of the repeaters down there that's going to activate the flying machine until you've cleared off this platform. But then, obviously, you have to clear off the platform in a specific order to make sure that you don't just immediately remove that. You could have fireworks go off, yeah. That'd be a fun way of doing it. Ah, see, now we have a problem. And it may be that part of the mechanism here is gone. When I copy this upwards, obviously the comparators and stuff here are resting on the ground. This is effectively what measures the contents of this dropper against the redstone output of a cake. And, yeah, those two comparators broke when that updated because, of course, there was nothing to support them because I didn't copy the grass blocks upwards. So I presumably have to do that over here and over there as well. Unless I've done that already and just not remembered. Yep. This has some random andesite blocks brought with it, which is a concern, but that seems like it's okay. I think that may have been from when I deleted a row of this because I realized I'd built it too low down when I copy and pasted it upwards. And now that's collecting all of those. So that one's already on the return. Did I get a haircut? I did. I was talking to my barber about this, actually. I was like, people who don't show up to my stream today are going to be asking if I've got a haircut for the next couple of streams. Although there's only going to be one more, actually, before I go away, because next week is 8-bit D&D.
Well, that's just prime.
Wonder if building this makes it easier than just placing the copper in a field. I mean, it doesn't make it easier in the short term, but in the long term, if you're planning on using a lot of copper, then sure. I reckon it does. MP Beans, thank you for the 5 months. Love the glazing of Hermitopia, thank you. It was fun. Obviously a lot of work, but fun work. remove that. So, like, another way this could happen, like, is if you had... Excuse me. Does it still work if you mix in cut copper and stairs? Yeah, it would. The only problem with that being you can get 4 times as much cut copper out of a regular copper block if you use a stone cutter. So, in theory, you are cheating yourself out of 3 extra blocks of copper that you could be aging at the same time, basically. So here is potentially one way we could remove some copper from this platform, right? You eliminate the platform entirely. You end up with an observer watching a wall around here. Wall, like so. You get some redstone dust. And when an observer detects that this wall is connected to something like that, it notices the change in the wall. We run that into redstone wire along the back of these pistons, and then that whole thing gets pushed down. And every time a row of copper gets pushed in here, right, it gets pushed downwards by this row of pistons, and you end up with a vertical row, which in theory leaves room for 4 more blocks to be pushed in. The problem with that is that our piston flying machines are coming in with the limit of how many blocks they can place. So these 4 blocks can't be pushed out of the way yet, but they need to be cleared out of the way for another load to come in. So you have to get rid of all of this. Which is why you can't just deal with, like, hey, put in a piston feed tape and have it all pushed downwards. Unless you do that right as the stuff comes in, basically. And then sooner or later, that piston feed tape ends up filling up. So it can do that with 8 blocks and leave room for the next 8 blocks to come in. It'll push a couple more down, but then it'll still have to push the rest of them in this way. So that is a problem. We currently have 3 of these returned, which means there is 1 left, and it's the one right down the end here, that has yet to return 1 block. That last block needs to age, and then this entire quadrant of the thing will be done. And then I can show you loading this, and then we can actually get on Empires and do some stuff. That looks like a problem, and trying to fix it will cause more problems. I see what you mean. Yes, yeah, that's really it. Justin Dive, thank you so much for the 12 months. Everyone spam the word nerd in the chat, please. Thank you so much for the full year supporting the channel. Enjoy that nerd sub badge. Welcome to the Nerd Herds. Happy to have you joining the ranks. And over here we have, yep, 1 more weathered block there that needs to age. The best thing about this, though, from what I have seen, is that we don't seem to have any of the blocks so far that have got caught in the machine because they've aged twice. So that is a fringe enough possibility. Like, these ones here still have 1 stage left to age. It's not like the counter is not keeping up with them. It's just that they have not aged yet. There are even a couple of fully copper blocks around here, even when the rest of the row has aged. And that's just due to randomness. All of the other blocks around these are not going to be holding those up from aging because they're fully aged themselves. So that is just genuinely a fluke that is happening. Looks like we have a couple of aged ones down here as well, but none of those have out-timed the system. We don't seem to have any here as well. That one's still there. And this is, like, stuff like this is why I can be fairly confident that we're not going to get multiple machines returning at the same time very often, because because there are genuinely some blocks in here that haven't started aging yet. Shenko with another 12 months. Wow, back-to-back nerd subs. You love to see it. Everyone was already spamming the word nerd, but keep it going for Shenko. Thank you so much. It looks like our second row has returned there as well, so that machine is working. We have a full return down here. So we can remove these as well. Can you make an array in World Edit? I don't know what that means. What do you mean by an array? Oh, wait, hang on. That's not a full return. That's just that one returning the first half of them, yeah? Oh, okay. Oh, excuse me. Well, that's fine. I just didn't realize that one hadn't done anything yet. Would this work independently in the spawn chunks? No. Random ticks need a player to be around. It's like how if you build a wheat farm in the spawn chunks, it won't grow unless a player is there. So like crop farms and stuff, even though people build them at spawn, so they're accessible if you die or whatever, or for like new players joining a server, there is no reason to build crop farms at spawn. They should ideally be around a player. Like anything that's based on random tick, it's based on this radius. Have you considered using a wither to break the collected copper? Gosh. Imagine. An array is like a certain number of rows and columns of a specific copied region. I mean, I can do that using Lightmatica in this world. That's sort of what I've done. Like, if I leave this for a second, and if I try and find where in the world I built the massive one, which would be back over this way. I can go to Spectator so I can fly faster. When I was working on this manual design, which is the one I built at Azuma's base, the one where you effectively load the copper onto these strips of magenta terracotta, and this is effectively like the largest space that you could build the most amount of these copper aging modules in, but it would all be loaded manually. Then the problem becomes that manual loading with the maximum amount of world height used is like an unfathomable task, much less collecting it. And obviously you'd have platforms running between each of these, but like this is the most you could build in the random tick radius if you went with that old manually loaded design. And that's the point at which you need to start considering any kind of automation is going to help you. The thing is, that isn't Psycraft style, because Psycraft would never build anything that stupid, because it's nothing to do with the scale of the thing, it's how practical it is to use, and that thing is not practical to use in the slightest. That's the reason I'm not building it this way now, and the reason that I've focused more of my efforts recently on getting automation working. And it's also why you couldn't have additional modules filling up these gaps here. Like, there's some pretty substantial real estate there, and there's some at the edges over on these sides. Like here, you could fit in one more module, and there, I know this radius isn't as exact looking right now, but yeah, there is room to fit in one more. And initially, I had platforms that were like in the middle down here, so that once the copper was done being sent out to the first 4 modules, it picked up another pad of 8 copper from there and sent that to the next 4 modules, so that it did it all in one trip. But then the problem with that is the player is running around rather than just like waiting for the machine to return while you're filling up another one, you know? Psycraft would use the Wither? No, I think they'd just use a TNT duper. It's a lot more reliable. People only bother using the Wither when you can break stuff like obsidian with it. Let me check on this one. That's just got that one left. This one's just got one left over there as well. That one was the one that we just returned. That one's got 3 more left. It's really between these two, isn't it? And that's the one that's right the way down the end here. Yeah, there's one there. I am frankly amazed, though, that when you're standing in the center of this, when you're in this chunk here, the back corner over there is still random ticking. Troad, thanks so much for the 10 months. Like, it's random ticking all the way to the corners of this. Is it possible to have per unit loading, unloading, and harvest automatically, then it doesn't have to wait for all the others in a row? In theory, yes, but you just add more redstone expense. Like, the reason I want to centralize all of this is so that I don't have to build, you know, a loader, an unloader, and a TNT duper for every single row of this. Like, in theory, everything does load and unload, but, like, if the machine comes down here, delivers the copper, and then returns, then that saves it having to have some way of offloading the copper, breaking it, and, like, that whole thing. Like, otherwise you just end up with this entire thing dropping TNT on itself constantly. Test it for lags. There are too many active redstone components. There honestly aren't that many active redstone components. And, like, I'm sitting here in my world with, like, pretty decent tick speed. Like, as far as I can tell. Like, the only time it's active is when flying machines are moving. Like, even in terms of, like, particles and stuff, the redstone torches don't really do anything. Not at this range. Like, if you get up close, then they have particles, but then they're like candles. Like, after a certain range, you don't really see them sparking like that. So in terms of rendering, it's actually pretty good as well. I'm really tempted to cheat one of these and just press a button. Oh, this one's returning. So that is the last one of this top layer to return half of it. Maybe change it to nighttime to check lag because of lighting updates. Lighting updates would be not a problem. Like, if anything, where there are redstone lamps, you could either replace them with note blocks, or alternatively, I mean, I guess, like, the flying machines might do something, but you just light the room fairly evenly. Like, as far as contraptions go, this thing is actually fairly lag-friendly. I feel like one of the major things that it has in its favor is that there aren't really a great deal of, like, hoppers and stuff around here. There are 4 in total, and those are all just part of the mechanism. Well, there are 4 on each level. Those are the part of the mechanism that counts how long the flying machine should stay there once it's collected all of the copper, and I want to show you guys that, because that's a whole separate thing. Lighting updates wouldn't be a lot either. It stays the same most of the time. Yeah, compare that to, like, Fwip's like illuminated pork sign. You know, like any of the lit up signs in Gobland that are producing lighting updates in a cave constantly. Mizukis, thank you for the 100 bits. Appreciate that. Come on, you. That one block there. I feel like so much of my life is just waiting for copper to age. There's that one right down the end there as well. Who's going to win this race? We should get a prediction going. We have northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. Which of these is going to return the last of its copper? 4-way prediction. Each of those signs produces more redstone and lighting lag than this entire contraption on average? Probably. Yeah, this contraption could be incredibly laggy if it did all of the stuff that it does at once, but it never does. That one with one lagging block will be the last one, probably. And these have a chance to catch up because they have multiple horses in this race. Like, this has 4 rows that are almost fully complete. That's just got 1 weathered copper that needs to become oxidized. I am influencing the results just by, like, flying around here. Yes, I went for a haircut basically before the stream. So yes, people who think I've had a haircut, you are correct. It's a gentle giant, big and scary looking, but it's not. Yeah, something like that. Something like that. Oh. We have one returning up here. Each of these is also potentially a candidate, to be fair. But these ones are further along. Can't remember how to do a prediction. How do you do a poll? I can start a poll, or we can I can potentially do a prediction as well. Let me pause for a second just so we can get this prediction done before we continue the stream. I think I can run one from my dashboard, can't I? Or do I have to be in mod view to do this? See, I can't remember how to do it now.
It's cold outside. Maybe someday you'll realize.
All right, here we go. Which module of David will return first? Northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. Encase it in glass, quick. All right, you got 5 minutes. Five minutes to place your bets. I'm not going to unpause it until we're done. We may not even get to landscaping this stream. I may just like do experiments with David because it's fun. But I'm not going to change my stream title because I do still want to get to landscaping at some point. People over or underestimate lag sources all the time. A single hopper between two double chests can be a lag monster under specific circumstances. People's average cow and chicken pits are usually much worse than redstone contraptions. Yeah, because there's all of those, like, for a start, you've got collisions being processed, and that should have, like, momentum that's being calculated, and you've also got entity path finding. Like, villagers are really laggy and stuff as well, and bats and things like that, right? So people assume that large redstone contraption equals lag, but large redstone contraption better be doing stuff constantly if it's going to produce lag on any scale. Voting Southeast only because I'm from the Southeast. Got to represent. Fair play. Fair play. I think I'm technically in the Southeast as well, of the UK specifically. I want to see what these predictions are coming in at. Wow, not a lot of people saying Southeast, surprisingly. Northwest and Southwest are also pretty well subscribed to there. Can you predict on more than one? No, you have to choose one. You can't, like, hedge your bets. It's like betting on every horse in the race, you know? Although I expect if you do that, you'd lose more money than you'd gain. Oh, good. I just got a text from the airline to let me know that I no longer need to take a COVID test before I travel. I just need to make sure I have my, like, NHS app with proof of vaccination. So that's good news. I'll probably take one, like, at home just to be sure, but I don't have to have, like, a certificate, like a specifically medically administered one. When do I leave? Next week. So there's not going to be a stream next Thursday because we'll be traveling. Where am I going? Going to California to visit my partner's family. My partner and I are going back for the first time in a couple of years for, like, a kind of post-Christmas family meetup. Home tests are so helpful for travel and planning. Yeah. I mean, obviously, as far as, like, medically speaking, they are more prone to human error. But, yeah, it's good for peace of mind more than anything. The medical ones are the ones where they poke your brain. yeah, like, I'm fortunate enough to never have had to have a COVID test administered to me by somebody else because I didn't do nearly anything during the pandemic. I went and got vaccinated and that was it. But I hadn't really done anything that involved meeting up with other people or needing to take that precaution, so. How long will I be there? A couple of weeks. Do a lot of places still require proof of vaccination for international travel? I presume so, yes. Because, like, an outbreak could potentially be disastrous to their economy and everything. Yeah, I gather it's not fun. But it's the kind of thing that, were it part of your routine, you'd probably get used to it, right? Alright. Last few sections of the prediction are ticking down. So I'm going to unpause. It looks like northeast is the most popular answer. But strangely, southwest is doing pretty well too. So to recap, that is northwest, that is northeast. So these are the two modules which have just one block left to age. That right there is southwest, this one here is southeast. So that means no videos for a while. Do I have some ready? I'm going to be recording some this week that will go up during my time away. So obviously January's been very quiet, it usually is on YouTube anyway, with ad revenue being down and stuff, but then, yeah, February will see a bit of an uptick in videos. Flew to Germany and didn't need to show anything. From where? Because obviously different places have different regulations at this stage, but... Southeast doesn't look great. No wonder people didn't vote for it. Well, there you go. You never know, though. Because any of these could return at any moment. One Yotabyte, thank you for the 6 months. Hopefully you have a safe trip and a boring flight. I hope I have a boring flight in the sense of nothing unusual happening. Personally, I would love to be able to sleep on planes, but I never can. Oh, you flew in from South Africa? Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure what the different, like, European countries have in terms of regulations and restrictions these days. But, yeah, traveling to the United States, we at least need to show proof of vaccination. I don't think US nationals do. US citizens and people with an American passport, I don't think need to, because they might be returning home. But anybody traveling in from other nationalities does. Plane engines put me to sleep. I'm lucky. Yeah, you are lucky. I've only ever slept on a plane properly once, and that was because our flight was delayed by like 5 hours, and so we were supposed to leave at 7 in the evening, and we left at midnight. And by that point, we'd all spent 5 hours in a departure lounge, and we were just knackered. So we got on the plane, they served us dinner, and then we all just passed out. And that was probably the only time I've ever slept more than like an hour of dozing on a plane. I just can't do it. Can't sleep in a vehicle, I have to sleep in a bed or a sofa. I'm okay on like, in cars and buses and stuff. Like I'll probably sleep in the car on the way back from the airport once we land, because I inevitably don't sleep at all on the plane, which means I'm awake for 8 extra hours, and then it's like 2 p.m. when we land. So I pass out in the car, and then I wake up and we're basically home. Noise cancelling headphones make a world of difference on planes. I couldn't have active noise cancellation in my headphones because they're Bluetooth, and you can't have Bluetooth devices running. But I have some pretty padded headphones, so I think that will help. It's mostly just like the upright position and not really being able to relax in those seats. Boring flight was mostly meant for it to be uneventful and safe. Yeah, I'm sure. Like I think I took that with the the intention with which it was meant, but yeah, it's just it's a pain. Flying in general is not the best, but it's a means to an end. No Bluetooth? I'm pretty sure you can't use Bluetooth. Or like, you shouldn't. Because it's, like, wireless stuff can potentially, like, interfere. It's, like, the reason you have to have your phone on, like, airplane mode and stuff. That disables Bluetooth. But it may be that Bluetooth is more viable on planes now. Either way, I have a cable for my headphones, so I don't need to use Bluetooth. Bluetooth is now okay. I suppose it also depends on the plane, right? Either way, yeah, I'm fine just using my headphones with a cable. Biggest problem with not being on airplane mode is your phone battery draining because it looks for cell towers constantly. That makes sense. If it did actively interfere, they would confiscate your devices. That's probably true. But, I don't know. Maybe for my own peace of mind. I like to think that I'm not having any kind of active role in sabotaging the plane when I fly. Because I would like my flights to just be over and done with nothing ever going wrong. Having something on a cable means you won't lose it in the seats. Yeah, I mean, I have over-ear headphones, not like AirPods. I don't like having wireless, like, earbud type headphones. I don't really like having earbud headphones in general anyway, because they're harsher on your ears. But, yeah, I'd find that anything like that would probably just fall out of my ear because I have the type of ears that happens to a lot. David is becoming a chunky boy, yes. We're currently waiting for any of these 4 lower modules to return the last of its copper. These 2 only have 1 piece of copper left to age, but it's taking its sweet time because random ticks. And this one has 3, this one has 4 more rows to go, but we had a prediction going for which one is going to return first. Can you speed up the process? I could increase random tick speed, but the problem with that is that I don't want to. I kind of want to see this contraption working at the rate it would normally work in a survival world, partly because increasing the random tick speed would mean that the flying machines could potentially collide with some of these other things because they'd be returning the copper much faster. It's for that one person with a cheap knockoff that hasn't been tested to standard and cost like £1 off Wish. Yeah, fair enough. Is this a bunch of Davids next to each other? Not exactly. I mean, this is the latest iteration of me trying to like automate some of the process of loading and unloading these. But then it's stacked vertically. So this entire area can age a shulker box of copper at once. Three Davids wearing a trench coat. Yes, that's what this is. Do I have any good fantasy books I would recommend? I mean, Lord of the Rings has always been my favorite. But outside of that, if you haven't read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, that's fantastic. Does Meg David mean it's Goliath? No. What I termed Goliath was the giant version with like all of the manually loaded aging machines. Susanna Clarke is amazing. Agreed. I have not read what was the newest one she wrote? The newest one she published, rather. I forget what it was called. Began with a P. Piranesi. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet. But I've read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I've read The Ladies of Grace Adieu. We have Piranesi, I just haven't read it yet. Anyone who likes Lord of the Rings should give Wheel of Time books a chance. I've heard that they're a similarly epic kind of journey in fantasy world. If you want something a little bit darker and a little bit more kind of grim and steampunky, China Mirville's usually a good shout. The City in the City is quite good, as is Perdido Street Station. Those are the ones I've read. Some people saying no, don't touch Wheel of Time, and then people saying Wheel of Time is fantastic. Welcome to the dualities of the internet. But yeah, like there's a lot of fantasy that's going to appeal to some people, but not others. It depends what your particular flavor of fantasy is. Like I really enjoyed The Lies of Locke Lamora, which is Scott Lynch's first novel in like his ongoing sequence of books. And I've read the next 2 of those and thought they were equally good. But yeah, it depends what you want out of your fantasy. Oh, I haven't read any of the kind of Commissar. I haven't read any of the other ones that are in like the same world, like the Bass Lag trilogy or quartet or whatever it is at this point. But yeah, I've heard they're good. There's an encounter in a recent D&D module that's literally 3 kobolds in a trench coat. That's amazing. That's very good. Have I read the Silmarillion? I've read most of it. I got up to the Akalabeth and then stopped. Is it the Akalabeth? The one that's like concerning Numenor? Because I always get confused because he has all of these names for each of them, and so I get the Akalabeth and the Aina Lindale confused. But yeah, like that was my first time reading the Silmarillion, kind of in preparation for Rings of Power, although the Silmarillion is largely about the first age, not the second, so it gave me a bit of a primer on the history of the elves. But yeah, there's there's still a little bit left to read there. We do have unfinished tales as well, and that's, again, some of the kind of side material that might be interesting to people who enjoy Rings of Power. Or even didn't enjoy Rings of Power and just want to read the actual books. Keeping track of the names is hard. Not nearly as hard as, like, I've been watching some people play Elden Ring again. I really want to replay Elden Ring, even though I have no means to, like, take it with me on holiday because I don't have a Steam Deck or anything. But it's so hard keeping track of the names in Elden Ring because they all start with either M or G. There's, like, a Godwin, a Godfrey, and a Godric. And then there's Melina, Melania. What's the other one? Who's the other one who's basically like Melania's shadow? There's like a Melissa or something, and like I don't know. There's so many of them that all have like almost identical names. I mean, there's Mikola, who's Melania's sister, but then Marika. There's just so many of them, and then the Moog and whoever else. Like there's so many characters whose names begin with either M or G, and it's just like, oh. We got one back. We got one back from, what is that, Southeast? Southeast has returned one. Exciting times. So these two are now neck and neck. We're still waiting on either of the northern ones. The Southeast supporters rise up. Also haven't checked on this top row for a little while, but any of these also count, because they've all now returned their first load, so we're waiting on the second loads from each of them. Those were loaded later, but it's all based on random ticks, so there's no reason that they shouldn't return sooner. If the timings lined up and the random ticks were executed well. Random tick is wild. When you actually look into how it works, like, it's so interesting. Basically, it's choosing... Like, the random tick speed of 3 basically means it's choosing 3 blocks from every sub-chunk, I want to say. Basically, every 16 block high sub-chunk of this entire chunk, top to bottom, from the bottom of the world to the top. And it's choosing 3 blocks from each sub-chunk to receive a random update. And then the next time the game ticks, it chooses another 3 blocks, and so it's just constantly choosing 3 blocks at random from every 16 by 16 by 16 area. Really? Sorry, tennis updates. Bear with me. Really?
It is wild.
I can hear the crowd noise. I'm like, really?
I'm in my bathroom. I have to stream. And I'm just going. I don't want.
Cosme is having trouble getting away from the tennis.
I don't want to get Discovery Plus again, and I'm annoyed. There's like, you can add. Sorry. 3:15. What?
It's happening. All right. Which? Yep. Okay. Sorry.
But yeah, like, I don't want to get. You can get like a Discovery Plus add-on
Northeast.
to Prime, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. This is annoying. I'm wishing I could see this. There was a shot in the start of the 3rd set that basically started Andy's kind of like resurgence. And he had like a tiebreak in the 2nd set.
Congratulations, Northeasters.
Or he almost won it in the tiebreak in the 2nd set. But the starter in the 3rd set, he lost serve, and then it was like 2-love, and then he held this 1 point, and in that 3rd game, and it was just a wild round. Like, I'll
Yeah.
so I was just like, what is happening here? And it's been,
Huh.
the 7th, there's another tiebreak in the 3rd set, which he took, and then the 6-3 4th set, and now we're 3-3.
Wow. That's intense.
I have to stream. No, I'm gonna be useless. Anyway, sorry, I had to let you know.
That's fine. Thank you.
Chris texted me, he was like, are you watching this match? I was like, I'm listening to the audio.
I'm kind of impressed
And
that
my mom was like, I'm putting it on right now.
Isn't it like 4 a.m. in Australia?
Yes! Yes! They were exhausted!
I bet.
It's so late!
That's intense.
They were like, this is, the radio commentary is like tennis breakfast. That's what it's called on the radio.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they were like, so it's for anyone who's going on their commute home from work. Hi.
Yeah,
welcome."
yeah. It's like, welcome to it being 4:30 a.m.
Oh my god. Anyway, I'll let you go.
All right, both the northeast ones returned, but did not drop off the 4th shovel. So that means that either something is going wrong. Yeah, northeast is definitely the winner. Northeast is the star of this because everything on this corner has worked out. Yeah. So that's a concern. I need to look at. Those are all going through. I need to look at the other ones that have had anything return, because this is up to 3 right now. Where is the counter? The counter is only at 2. I need to know what has gone wrong there, because one of these, like, has... The ones that have all returned have pushed that terracotta block over, which should, at the time, have sent a signal down here. And that signal should have reached this dropper and pushed the counter on by 1. And it shouldn't have sent a signal back this way, because those two are isolated, and otherwise it would be doing that all the time. So I need to know what's gone on there. Why is the cake? The cake is just there to provide a comparator signal, because a cake with 3 slices left outputs a comparator signal strength of 6. And if you have 4 shovels in here, then that comparator produces a signal strength of 7. And the comparator input to the side basically prevents this comparator from powering up until the signal exceeds 6. But yeah, each of these observers is looking upwards towards this block, and it's like one of them just hasn't sent the signal down, or maybe the signal has been brief enough that it didn't transmit to the next block or something. It's the problem with observers, is that sometimes a 1-tick pulse isn't gonna do it for you. And so with these, has that done the same thing? So we've got 2 returns here, and there's 3 in there. Which one is it? I don't see any commonality. See, this is a problem. It was fine doing this the first time around, but the second time around, for whatever reason, even though one of these has returned, it hasn't sent the signal. Didn't 2 arrive at the same time? No, I mean, that would have had to happen on each of these. That's a problem. Because each of these counters is off by 1. That should have 3 in there already, because 3 of these lines have returned and we're just waiting on this last one, which just has that left to do. I don't think it's something with the reset mechanism. Because the reset mechanism runs along this line of dark oak planks here. and it just sends a signal down here 4 times. I mean, it sends it twice, and then this turns on and off 4 times, and that resets this dropper. It pushes all the contents back into there, but now it should have received 3 signals, and somewhere along the way the signal is getting lost. Maybe I flew out of reach at the wrong time. You think it could be like a redstone signal thing, but why would it be so consistent? Like, I think it's just that one of the observers, for whatever reason, some kind of fluke of timing, has, like, prevented it from... Could 2 signals coincide? No, there's no reason they should. The reset only happens when the flying machine is down this end, dropping off the copper, and we haven't had any situations where some more copper has come in since, otherwise it'd be on the other end of the room. And there haven't been any situations in which 2 of these have come in at the same time, but even if they had, there are some of these which only have 1 module that's returned yet. And that still has all 4 shovels in the dropper. So that hasn't even counted 1 yet, even though it should have. But it's not this specific module that's had an issue, and the block has been pushed over, which means the signal should have registered with that observer. I think it's a signal length, like it's a pulse duration thing. Can you trigger it again manually without resetting the flying machine and watch the behavior? I mean, yes. It's the kind of thing that I would prefer to do with a replay mod so I could fly around and see where things happen, but I also don't know how accurate replay mod is in capturing some of that stuff, so it worries me. See, this is why I put the repeaters in, because sometimes, like, observers have this sort of behavior. Like, let's say, for example, we put an observer here, and then we put a block up there, like that. They don't like sending the redstone signal diagonally all of the time. So, like, they don't like sending it diagonally downwards, like that. And so I put repeaters in here just to make sure that when this observer detects the block sliding over the top of it, the signal strength actually gets lengthened slightly by the duration it has to pass through the repeater. I think it should work even if the repeater's only set to 1 tick. So having issues on my contraptions where lanterns wouldn't light via observer unless the repeaters afterwards were 2 ticks or more on rare occasions. I think that might be it. And the problem with doing that is that if I have to output every... if I have to change every repeater to 2 ticks here, we could potentially do that. But then I think what happens is this has to be fast. This has to be like slower than that. Like, let me try this. We'll force that one to eject. Because this should all return like normal. Is it worth it to make David large enough to accommodate different stages of aging with an auto waxer? Potentially. And that would be quite easy to do, but the problem is... Oh, did you see that? It actually aged while it was being moved around. That's pretty funny. So now that should have... That's activated. That should have sent a signal to this, and it's pushed another shovel out. Okay. So that... Wait, no, hang on. There's another one down there. That's not going to be conclusive. I didn't count how many were in here first. I probably should have, but there's 3 there now. So now we need to force this one to update as well. Is auto waxing a thing? It is, yeah. Yeah, you can use dispensers to wax copper. So now when this arrives, it'll shuffle the copper blocks around. As soon as it starts doing that, that redstone line should light up and it'll pass the signal on to the next. Yeah. And that gets sent through. That activates this. Everything returns. See, theoretically, this one should already have 2 shovels moved over, and it only has 1. But then my main concern now is making sure that it resets. When all of this copper arrives... Why is there an orange block? Because we didn't wait for that one to finish aging. We ejected it manually. Roxy, thank you for the raid. Welcome in. So now that should have sent 2 signals down here, which pulsed this redstone lamp twice, which means that observer pulses 4 times. It's only done it 3 times. Okay. And that's the kind of thing that is really difficult to track. But like if we do this... I mean, hopefully that would have worked. Can you F3 on the droppers? Maybe one of them thinks it's powered when it isn't. This one says triggered false. That one says triggered false, but... What about the ones up here? Yeah, those 2 say false. I don't know. I assume that they're getting an update too late or something, if that's the case. See, this one should have 2 shovels, and it does have 2 shovels, but we might have adjusted that one manually. This one should have already had 2. Yeah, maybe we have to set all of these to 2 ticks just to make sure that the signal strength is long enough that that dropper actually receives it. But either way, let's ignore that for now, because that's something I'm going to have to do a bit more off-camera testing for. And I'll show you how to load the thing, because this is kind of fun. I will just briefly fly around and check that this one doesn't have anything left in it. Nope, it doesn't. And all of the droppers have been reset with 4 shovels, because it does that by flying over that observer. So the way you load these things, first of all, you flip this switch. And what that does is it locks the first 4 here using locking repeaters, which is the first time I've had a contraption of mine use locking repeaters, so I'm quite pleased with that. And this serves two purposes. First of all, when the flying machine comes over here, basically what it's doing is activating this repeater for long enough that the machine, when it passes over with all of the copper, these pistons grab a row of copper from the back of the machine, and then it just moves forward a step and picks it up and carries on going. That also sends the signal back to the flying machine to say, hey, there's some copper waiting here, take off. So by locking that repeater, we simultaneously prevent it from picking up any copper from here and from launching the flying machine, which means as this goes past with 8 rows of copper, it only fills up the last 8 rows of the machine. So to do that, first of all, I haven't respaced this yet. So I can probably do that with this one just to be like thorough about this. I realized that these needed respacing because this wall sometimes gets pushed out of the way. So what we need to do is quickly reformat this. I was doing a little bit of this earlier. We need to remove that. We need to put an observer facing into a wall. Let's use a stone brick wall. Do that here. Face that way. Remove this half. And build that half. Okay, cool. So that should all be set up again. We need a piece of obsidian behind this, because otherwise you can potentially push that wall out of the way and it prevents it from working again. So these all now get 0 ticked into place. Typically you need to do these 8 blocks at a time anyway, because otherwise you just end up like spamming blocks everywhere like this. Okay, and now making sure that lever is held down. It flies off. This is incredibly noisy because it's pushing past that wall again, but it's fine, it leaves. And with it taking longer before the copper gets into position, doesn't that increase the risk of it aging before you're counting the changes? In theory, it's not going to. Or at least, like, it could, maybe, but it's around so much other fully aged... Not fully aged. It's around so much other fresh copper that it is incredibly unlikely for it to age because it's checking constantly whether or not it can age. And most of the time, if there is other copper around it that's of a similar age, it will be like, okay, no, it doesn't want to age yet. Which is why we space it out in the first place, right? And so now this timer mechanism here basically waits until all of the contents from that hopper have been pushed into the... Or all the contents from the dropper have been pushed into the hopper. The hopper gets locked by the redstone block being there, and that waits for that flying machine to get past before this flying machine returns. So the loading process, yeah, is really satisfying. And now the most important thing is that we don't flick this lever until the flying machine returns to the station and we start loading the second one. Because otherwise it can launch these flying machines before there's any copper waiting for them, and then you'd have to go over there and like manually return them. Which isn't a huge problem, but it's still kind of annoying. But once the flying machine is back, we flip this lever, we do the same thing. Yeah, and if you hold down right click the entire time, you will end up spamming copper blocks. Okay, once that's full, we press that, and now those repeaters are no longer locked, which means that the machine can pick up copper blocks from the back once again. And then these flying machines launch and they take that copper away. And now this half of the machine is going to be fully loaded. The loading is that fast, it's that simple. And at this point, there is no chance of this machine colliding with anything returning from this half of the room because nothing has had enough time to age yet. Although, we do have a couple here that have already advanced to the exposed copper stage, which is quite cool. We can do the same thing up above here as well, I think. Because there's one of these that returned recently. I think it's this one. So we could load this side. Yeah, there's nothing in this one right now. And we could load this bottom row here as well. What's up, David? What's up, David, with you? David 6, Return of the Copper, yes. So yeah, now this is returned. We can remove that. This one and this one still have to drop theirs off. Yeah, it flashes a couple of times, like a couple of components connect here and there, but then that doesn't do anything once the flying machines have all been sent off, so it's fine. And the one outlier for this whole process is over here, because of course there was going to be one of them that was a problem. If you build the same setup as we had before, right? If you build this whole mechanism, but you build it with regular pistons alongside here, and you build it automatically like zero ticking in like this, this redstone dust powers the piston there before it powers that piston. And so for whatever reason, this northwest quadrant is the only one that won't let you build it that way. So what I've had to do in order to make sure that this works the same way is set it up so that it pushes sticky pistons across here so that the redstone dust there doesn't connect to these. And it's pushing stairs instead of full blocks, because if it was pushing a full block, the full block would connect to the wall there, and that would cause the entire thing to, like, shuttle back and forth constantly. Like if you did this. Because that's the observer detecting the shape of the wall changing. So you have to build one of them slightly differently, and as a result... Oh. As a result, the input is like a little bit slower. Because that set of sticky pistons needs to go out and retract. And I think also, if you set it to 2 ticks there, that's slightly more reliable, because when the flying machine leaves with all this copper, it's going to activate this wall a bunch of times, and sometimes it can leave the stairs like up against this row, and there's no way of putting them back until you start loading again. Yeah, update order is fun, but also hell. So I think this one, yeah, still has stuff to load, so we can't... It still has stuff to unload, so we can't load it yet. But in theory, you could prime these early. The problem is, of course, then you are leaving yourself open to scenarios in which the copper can age prematurely because you've just left it sitting out in the open. So you want to wait for all of the returns to come back before you load the next one. But then, of course, this is also a contraption that's aging an entire shulker box of copper at a time, so you don't really need to worry about that. Like, if you are aiming to age copper any faster than this, then build the contraption bigger, I guess. But yeah, up on this level up here, I had to implement the same thing, where this whole setup happens. I was watching Mango's latest Psycraft vid. He was complaining about the rework of Redstone update order, which was updated sometime during 1.19, which makes contraptions even more contraptions are made directional. Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame, but then that's only 1 out of 4 of these that you need to do that with, so ultimately it's not the worst thing in the world. No idea why Redstone Dust update order is so unpredictable and yet so laggy. You'd think not having a specific order would be a feature that could be used for performance improvements, yet there are mods that make the update order predictable and faster. Yeah. Yeah, it's... As usual with Minecraft, there's usually some stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know why things work the way they do, but it's probably either future-proofing something or it just makes more sense to not break other things elsewhere in the game. But, you know. But I mean, Mojang hired Panda, who was one of the people who'd done a really good job of optimizing Redstone in the distant past. They hired Nembon, who has been working with technical Minecraft and pioneered a lot of the techniques that technical Minecraft players use for farm design. Like, if these folks aren't able to push through changes that make Redstone better for people, then there must be a good reason, in my opinion. And those people are always going to be working with an outdated version of Minecraft because the people developing the current version of the game are working towards 1.20. Anyway, that's where David is at right now. I do need to do a couple more tests, basically, because I want to make sure that increasing the delay on these is going to have the desired effect without breaking anything else, which I don't think I foresee it breaking anything else, but then again, I didn't foresee it having this problem to begin with, because on the first run of everything, it worked fine. So we'll have to see. But for now, we're going to leave David and we're going to go to Empires for a bit. This looks like it will outgrow Survival Minecraft soon. I mean, in a way it already has, because I'm having to build it in creative so that I can do literally anything with it. But I'm going to bring it back into Survival Minecraft and actually build some of that in Survival Guide at some stage fairly soon. That's my plan, at least. Somebody pointed out that I should go onto the nether roof and encase the Hermitopia portal in glass as well. So that's what I'm going to do. But one of the main things I want to do today is take a look at the area around the ancient capital and see how well equipped it is to build a castle. I should be okay doing this with glass as well, because glass isn't spawnable for ghasts. So that should work, right? Yeah, like this. I think Andy Murray may just have done something. I did pick up the shulker in the end, don't worry. And by the time I got rid of a stack of glass, I would have been able to pick up the shulker by that point, so don't need to worry too much about that. Oh, did he win against Kokinakis? Wow, that's wild. Like, that must have been a heck of a comeback, because he was 2 sets down. Have to remove the carpet on top? Yeah, might as well. The carpet's only there for spawn proofing, and we are spawn proofing it by putting glass blocks on it. Would I ever consider using color glass for some of these? Honestly, no, just on account of how much extra crafting that adds to stuff like that. Like, I might do it for a smaller case like this, but obviously not for something the scale of Hermitopia or surrounding Joel's base in glass. And I honestly think having colored glass around something also sort of distorts your perception of what color the thing is in the first place. So I sort of prefer having clear glass so that you get to see things in their original state. Has anyone died hitting the Hermitopia glass box? Not to my knowledge, but I also don't know who's been on and who hasn't. I know Ollie is skiing right now, so I think a lot of people are saying he's the most likely to do it, and he has not. There we go. Once again, totally impenetrable glass box. Then put the carpet back on top of the glass. That'd be really funny. I'm not gonna worry about that though. No guided tours of Hermitopia then? Probably not, unless people really want them, but I also don't know what all's in there. I don't know what absolutely everything in Hermitopia is. Weirdly enough, light grey works better for me. I think light grey is better at looking transparent because the streaks in the glass aren't as obvious with light grey. But I still think it dulls the colour of whatever it is you're looking at slightly. Joel electrocuted into the box that was around Stratos. Don't recall if he died. I don't think he died. Don't think it was that bad. I could just be throwing this into my automated storage, but I think I would rather drop it off manually so that I can just leave again quickly. Charge admission for tours. It's the thing, nobody really wants a tour of Hermitopia if they're going to be charged for it. This is all the stuff that we took from the Bastion the other day. So we've got a couple of extra stacks of Blackstone and Blackstone bricks. All of which I'm just going to freely offload into here because it doesn't matter really which ones I use. And I can always drag large amounts of them out of each chest anyway. So those can go back in there. Perfect. People want tours of Hermitopia to steal. They don't need a tour to do that. Do you think you could finish centralizing the farm output of Hermitopia? It's probably contrary to what we actually want to do with Hermitopia, which mostly involves turning some of the farms off so that they don't lag the server out when Hermitopia is loaded. You can't get through the impenetrable glass case. I appreciate you playing along. Oh yeah, piglin head, bone blocks, those can go in storage. I'm keeping the mob heads in here, but I will put the other stuff in the actual storage system. Opening another rift just to get the hermits to turn their farms off. It doesn't quite work like that. Andy Murray has done some exciting stuff. What rift? We have gem right there. Yeah. Can you both preserve a site and utilize the resources it produces? Yeah. when so many of those resources are renewable like they are in Minecraft, it seems more likely. Considering that we have self-repairing structures in Minecraft, right? Like, that actually seems like a viable use of that technology.
He won!
Yeah, I know. Exciting times. Can I explain bundles? Sure. What do you want to know about them? Like, why they're on the server to begin with, or, like, how they work? Because how they work is pretty cool. We have the recipe, the crafting recipe data pack that means you can craft them using leather instead of rabbit hide. But basically the purpose of bundles is to hold up to a stack of different items. But those items can just be any stackable item that exists in your inventory. So like a bed is going to take up the entire bundle because they normally take up a full stack of your regular inventory. The idea is to clean up clutter in your inventory so you can use the space in your inventory more more efficiently, I guess. So like right now I have a bunch of things in here. We have a carved pumpkin, that's what the sunglasses are, an ender chest, my lore compass, which currently isn't pointing towards anything because the collab is over, a clock, a stone cutter. All of that stuff is stuff that I just put in here, and then none of that has to take up room in my inventory. But workstations are a really good example of this, like crafting tables, ender chests, stone cutters, even like, you know, a smithing table or whatever. They're all stackable items, they're all different items, they're all going to take up space in your inventory, but you can put them all in a bundle and then they only have to take up one space instead of taking up like 6 different spaces. You can do the same thing when you go mining, for example, if you have, like, a couple of scrappy, like, ore things. Or, for example, if you've condensed all of your redstone and lapis and gold and iron into their respective resource blocks, like you have those raw gold and raw iron blocks now, you can put all of those into a bundle and suddenly they're only taking up one inventory space when you have, like, you know, 15 blocks of raw iron, 30 blocks of raw copper, a couple of blocks each of the gold and redstone and whatnot. They're not in vanilla Minecraft in the sense that they aren't in default survival worlds, but they're currently an experimental data pack that you can put on in 1.20 snapshot worlds, and they are available through vanilla tweaks as a data pack for Java Minecraft. Unfortunately, they're not really a thing on Bedrock, because I think Bedrock Edition just has some issues with mobile users not being able to control them the same way, because you're using a touchscreen. You can't mouse over stuff in a touchscreen environment. It doesn't really work that way. But I think they're trying out new control schemes for Bedrock, which may make a difference to that in future. They may not, I'm not certain. How do you choose which item to remove from the bundle? It's last in, first out. So I put the stone cutters in there last. I can pull them out first, basically. So you do a bit of rearranging. The cool thing is you can use any space in your inventory that can accept those items to rearrange stuff. So if I want to get rid of the top 4 items in my bundle and take the clock out, I can do this. And then repack that stuff without having to, like, throw it on the ground. And then I can put the clock in at the top so I can get to that later. Alternatively, let's do it this way. If I wanted to, say I put like 27 emeralds in there, low down, and then I packed a bunch of other stuff on top of that. If I want to get to those emeralds, I can put 1 emerald in by right-clicking, and then the emeralds come to the top because that's the last thing I brought in, so it will stack those together, and now I can take all 28 emeralds out. And I find that quite useful. Like, I've genuinely done that a couple of times to get to, like, an ender chest when it's buried at the bottom of the bag. And that's how I tend to pack these things up. So I need to do some landscaping for preparation for the castle. Yeah, that's the idea. It's not so much even landscaping, it's more figuring out where I want this stuff to go and how much space I've got to work with. So, like, up here, this sort of ridge is the land that I want to be building the castle on. But I think we're going to expand things out the back here as well. For the scale of castle that I want to build, I'm looking to basically have it cover all of this mountainous area, probably this back half here as well. So I might build a cliff up on this side. Kind of on the side that borders, like, Animalia's out that way, Animalia. Don't know why I always pronounce it Animalia. The same vibe as digging through a purse and pulling out everything to get to the one thing you needed that's always at the bottom. Yeah, basically, yes. And I think the problem people have with them is that they're not as useful as shulker boxes for storing lots of stuff. But that's the point, right? Like, they're made out of much more basic resources than shulker boxes. They're not going to be as useful as shulker boxes, basically ever. And people are imagining that it's supposed to be some kind of inventory solution in terms of storage, and it's not. It's about using your inventory efficiently. Pronouncing Animalia the way we do it in Spanish. Animalia. Yeah, if it was the same thing as shulker boxes, it would make shulker boxes redundant, and then there'd be even less reason to go out to the further end to get hold of anything. Like, my pitch for it, because you can put bundles inside of shulker boxes as well. You can use the two in tandem, and what that does is help you use the space in shulker boxes more efficiently. Because suddenly the, like, 1s and 2s of blocks that you throw into a shulker box when you're packing it up, those can all be put in the bundle, and then you've got room for whole stacks of other material if you want it. Did the Hermits implement bundles on Hermitcraft? They've only just implemented bundles, and they've done it so that Vintage Beef can use them for his card game. So that they can be booster packs for his card game, or players can, like, have their cards stored in, like, a card binder, basically, and empty them all out into a shulker box. Because your deck isn't going to be more than 65, and maps can be stackable, and the bundle means that you can hold all of the cards in there instead of having to hold all the cards in your inventory, which is a neat way of doing it. But I'm kind of surprised that they hadn't thought of messing around with bundles before that, like it hadn't been of interest to them before that. I'm excited for the card game thing as well, yeah. Tomorrow, I may actually be making a cameo on Hermitcraft to go and try out the card game. See if anybody else is around from Empires and wants to do that. Rabbit Hide defeats the early game goal because it's actually somewhat hard to obtain. Yeah. And that's why the leather data pack just made more sense to us. But I think more uses for Rabbit Hide is a good thing. But Rabbit Hide doesn't feel like a significant enough item that it really merits having any kind of powerful uses, you know what I mean? I'm going to do this all out of stone to begin with. And then we'll probably mix in some other materials a bit later, but for the minute I just want to shape this whole thing out using stone. Will the Empire's members walk with Gem and Sausage back into Hermitcraft? I have no idea how we're going to explain it. It could just be a dream sequence, but honestly, in my case, it's never really going to matter that much, because for me, it's like lore isn't the kind of thing I'm doing with my own self. Like, all of my lore is world related and not character related, so. Rabbits are too cute and fiddly to be worth making important? Yeah, potentially. How's the landscarping going? It's going very well. People were asking earlier about why landscarping, and like an escarpment is like an outcropping of rock, I think. It's like a specific term for like... It's sort of outdated and archaic, but it's sort of a geological term, geographical, maybe. I feel like I end up seeing it used in like Final Fantasy games and stuff.
Well, that's just prime.
Full Metal Mathematician, thank you for the Prime sub. Daunty, thank you for the Prime sub earlier as well. Sorry if I missed that one. Thought it was a Scar joke because he's an excellent landscaper. I mean, it could be that too. Yeah, you know, interpret it how you will. What do you say for the damage tilt fix? I think it's cool. I think it's genuinely not something I ever knew was a thing before because I haven't played Minecraft since the early days when it was actually part of the game. But I think it's a neat thing that it's been fixed after all this time. It was clearly such a low priority bug before because, like, you're being damaged. Like, inherently knowing which direction it's coming from is not necessarily going to make things any easier, but yeah, I'm curious to see how it affects gameplay, if at all. Was there a new snapshot? Yes, it didn't have any new features as far as 1.20 goes, but it's working towards 1.19.4, adding more accessibility features, fixing a few bugs that can be relevant to current gameplay. There was only one thing that really affected experimental features for 1.20, and I think it was sort of minor, really. Woke up this morning, we had snow in the Netherlands. Everyone forgot how to ride. There's people riding their bikes around just going, ah! I had to drive. I was driving over to get my hair cut because I was charging the car at the same time. And I had to drive in slightly icy conditions, but it's not like... It's not really bad. It's just kind of been frosty overnight here in the UK. So, yeah, I was a little bit concerned about driving in that kind of environment, but it was not really that bad today. Supposed to have a snow day tomorrow, which is nice. Well, if you can enjoy having a snow day, then... I know some people really don't like snow. Like they'll like it for the purposes of, oh, it's fun and pretty and it makes it feel like winter and everything, but then it's obviously like an impediment to people getting to work or, you know, having to shovel their driveway, all of that kind of stuff. Like, it freezes the car over. Being an adult, you sort of... The charm of snow is often lost. But, yeah, I definitely have my my moments when I enjoy the snow when it happens. 68 degrees Fahrenheit in Atlanta right now. You've got the shop doors open. Well, yeah, I mean... I feel like Georgia, as far as US states goes, is going to be one of the more temperate ones. Right? If I remember my US geography. I'm terrible. Like, it's funny, when I went to... I spent a year in California as a kid, because my dad used to work for Philips, the electronics company, and he had a project that took him over there for like a couple of years. And so we spent a year in the US. I arrived when I was like, I guess 11. I would have been like either 10 going into 11 or 11 going into 12. But whatever year it was, I was doing 6th grade in the United States. And I was very happy I wasn't doing 5th grade, because 5th grade was when you had to do the test of whether you could remember all 50 US states. And that was a bunch of information I did not feel like I wanted to memorize as a British person who was only coming to live there for a year and then going away again. Yeah, Philips is Dutch. So, the factory, plant, office, whatever it would be over in Silicon Valley was one option, or the main Philips headquarters in Eindhoven was the other option. And my parents knew that it was going to affect me and my sister, so they basically said, which one do you want to go to, the US or the Netherlands? And we said the US. Don't think I had to memorize all the states and capitals? Well, you got lucky, because they did in the school I went to. And so they were like, we learned that last year, and I was like, I did not, and I will not be learning it now. I just about knew where I was at the time, but yeah, I mean, even in the UK, I don't think you ever get to a point where you need to memorize, like, all of the counties of the UK, unless you go to a school that, you know, really wants you to double down on that. But then UK counties are not necessarily that important, so it's perhaps not quite the same as US states. Like, when you consider that there are different laws in different states and stuff like that, I can imagine that knowledge being a lot more important. But each US state is more or less a small country. It's like 50 countries all being managed by the same, like, federal government. I'm from the UK, we never learned counties. I could probably name 75% of them, but couldn't tell you where they are in the country. Yeah, I think I can only name the ones that I've lived in. I can only point to you on a map on the ones that I've lived in, and maybe a couple of others. But yeah, outside of that, it just doesn't really hold that much importance. It's a whole lot easier in Germany, having to only remember 16 federal states, 3 of which are identical to their capital. Fair enough. It's nice that you and your parents cared about you and your sister's opinion. Yeah, I mean, it was quite sweet of them, especially considering it was related to my dad's work, and he could have just been like, we're going to Holland. But I think it was more that, you know, it was kind of a formative time in our education. We were only there for a year because we had to come back to the UK so my sister could take her GCSEs. Yeah. And my sister's a teacher now, so understands the importance of GCSEs, I guess. Will the castle be in ruin as well? Yes, but as far as ruins go, because the castle is going to have been built out of pretty substantial materials, it's probably going to be more, like, put together than some of the other structures around here. Like, it's not going to be like, let me try and find... like Corfe Castle, for example, right? You might be familiar with this from a project they did with National Trust. I think Grian was kind of the face of that project. Like, did a project reconstructing Corfe Castle. So Corfe Castle looks like this, right? This is kind of an example of the kind of thing I want to avoid doing, because you can project a lot of history onto images like this. Sorry, that's my Windows noise, not yours. But, like, I want there to be more structure to it than that. I don't just want it to be, like, rubble, effectively. Because if there's more structure to it, I can do more stuff with it. Like, I kind of like the idea of doing what I was initially planning on doing when we started this season. If I had had the time and I hadn't had a bunch of other stuff to take care of, I wanted to build more dungeons and have it be a bit more like my experience playing Elden Ring, where you explore the map and there's places that you can just wander into and loot, and there's stuff to fight in there. And I think where games like Minecraft fall down on that stuff is there not being a greater variety of enemies for you to fight beyond, like, it's a zombie wearing different types of armor. Like, you can't really... Like, once you fought a couple of enemies in Minecraft, you basically fought all of them, which is very different to Elden Ring or any of the Soulsborne games, where you effectively go through that game getting your butt handed to you by stuff until you learn their attack patterns. But yeah, we want this to be a castle that stood the test of time, and I think there's, like, I'm mostly using Stormvale Castle from Elden Ring as my main point of inspiration. Like, it's going to be, just flattening this out so I can torch it better, it's going to be maybe a slightly different architectural style from Stormvale. I don't want it to be quite as grim. I want it to be grim in some sense, but not in others, right? I don't necessarily want it to feel like it's a place where great atrocities happened, you know? Whereas, like, yeah, Stormvale in Elden Ring is not a friendly place. Do I use a controller connected to my computer? To play certain games, yes, but not to play Minecraft. Keyboard and mouse is just the most sensible layout for me for that. But as far as other stuff, like when I'm playing Elden Ring, yes. When I was playing Minecraft Dungeons, I was also using a keyboard and mouse, using a controller rather for that, even though keyboard and mouse was a control scheme that Dungeons had. I can't name all 50 states of the USA. I know about 30% that are generally well known, and 30% of that I can even point to on the map, like Texas, New York, Washington, Colorado, California, Nevada. Then I don't actually live in the US, never been there. There's a slim chance I'll ever get the opportunity. Yeah, there's a lot of US geography to learn, and if it's not going to be valuable to you to learn it, then you don't really need to worry about that, right? I do want to use some of the natural formation of the landscape like this, so I'm actually going to come out here. Most people in the US don't know them either. I feel like I could maybe, at a stretch, name all 50 US states. Like, if you gave me one of those Sporkle quizzes that gives you, like, 20 minutes to name all 50 US states, I reckon I could manage that. But then again, I couldn't tell you where each of them was. Now, chat, is Washington on the East Coast or the West Coast? This is a trick question. I mean, yeah, like, there's Washington, D.C., and then there's Washington State, where Seattle is, over on the West Coast. For my next trick, I'll find Iowa on the map. No, I won't. One of the only things I know about Iowa is it's where Bill Bryson is from. There's a bit in one of Bill Bryson's, either like his biography or one of his travel books, where he says, I was from Des Moines, Iowa, because someone had to be. I thought it was quite funny. Iowa doesn't exist. Take that up with, is it Ijevin? I think Ijevin lives in Iowa. Ohio. See, like, it's the four-letter ones that have all the I-O. Old MacDonald clearly lives there. They have all of those same sounds, and I get confused between them. Apologies to Ijevin. Yeah, the E-I-E-I-O. All of that kicks in suddenly. The old MacDonald of it all. See, this is like the perfect spot to have some kind of like cave entrance or gate that leads you into the undercroft of the castle, right? Looking at the shape that we're building here. This is obviously like a fairly diagonal but mostly natural looking wall. We can have this kind of come out and outcrop a little bit. This is all fairly high terrain to begin with, so you don't need to do much to just bring it up to a certain height, but like if you look at it from down here, there's clearly a fair bit of hill that you have to climb before you get to the rock that the castle is built on. I live in Ohio, so I'm used to it. Yeah, fair enough. We have a tiny town in Mississippi named McDonald. I mean, sure, yeah. There's some great town names in the United States. Like, I think it's funny because there's so many funny town names in the UK that just sound like such stereotypical UK place names. Like, whenever we have reason to look at maps, my partner is always just incredibly amused by how twee some British place names sound. Yeah, I don't live too far from Dorking. Dorking is in Sussex, I think. Like, but for a few dozen miles, I could live in Dorking. But, yeah, the US has all of those kind of, like, Puritan-sounding places that are called things like Truth or Consequences, right? The town of Dull, Scotland, is twinned with Boring, Oregon. That's very good. That's very, very good. Ting Tut, thank you for gifting a sub. Very much appreciate that. And Ayla Silverthorn with the 2 months earlier. Thank you very much for the 2 months. Sorry if I missed that one. You have Hell, Michigan, among others. Yeah, we have Hull over here, which is more or less the same thing. Religious grounds notwithstanding. There's also a Eureka in Montana. There's also a Yreka in California. I think it's in California. There's probably a Yreka in a few other places. Because the US also likes to reuse place names, I find. Just because there's so much of it. So, like, if you're building a town somewhere, chances are it's got the same name as another town. Especially if it's named after one of the founding fathers and you've just got, like, Jacksonville or whatever. Washington has 2 very well-known places. Portland, Maine, Portland, Oregon, yeah. When Dave Gorman, the UK comedian, was doing a tour of the United States, but only stopping at, like, mom and pop diners, hotels, and gas stations, like trying to see if you could cross America without visiting any of the chains. It's a really interesting, like, documentary and book that he wrote about it, but he said he wanted to visit every town named Independence that was going to be on his route, and there were, like, 6 of them just leaving the West Coast. It was, like, Independence, California, Independence, you know, Oregon, Independence, Arizona. You know, there were a good handful of them before he even got to the halfway line of the United States. Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, we have towns that translate to Praise Godville. Yeah. Yeah, there is that. There is that. Independence is a Western Mississippi town name. It's a Western freaking everywhere town name, apparently. It's like the fact that the town from The Simpsons is called Springfield, but there's Springfields in so many different states that was probably why they picked the name, was just so it could literally be anywhere USA. It's near Shelbyville, that narrows it down, right? Shelbyville is where the Evermore is. On this server, at least. There's a Miami, Oklahoma. I bet it's very different from Miami, Florida. Imagine going to Miami, Oklahoma and looking for, like, Cuban food. Ah. The one good thing about it, like, getting darker is that it highlights quite easily which areas of this I need to light up to prevent mob spawns later. the mountain building came in handy here. Yeah, sure did. Although this time, obviously, significantly smaller than the Mountains and Survival Guide. I'm building this without any kind of framework because, honestly, at this stage, I can sort of eyeball it. I might even come out with better results if I eyeball it a little. But yeah, we can extend this around here. We can probably loop up the land there. Where will the ski lift be? Ski lift directly into the castle. Hey, more emerald ore. Sam, thank you for the 100 bits. In Norway, there's a city called Hell. I do want to live there. Yeah, I think somebody else mentioned there was a Hell somewhere in the United States. The streams are so perfect to watch while I'm at work, and it's a slow day. The stream gives me so much joy and entertainment. Well, thank you so much. That's always lovely to hear. Yeah, I spent the first half of the stream just, like, jabbering on about my copper aging machine, so... Speaking of which, this one hasn't done too much down here. But has obviously been aging a little bit whilst I've been pottering around in the area. But yeah, consider the size of this one compared to the size of the one I have in Creative. The one I'm planning on building in Survival Guide. But you know, I've got practice at building them now, so one hopes that I'll be able to deliver a little quicker once I've got the resources together. But it's really just going to be an exercise in figuring out what farms I need. Because for a start, I'll need a copper farm just so I can keep up with the amount of space we have to age copper. But then I'll also need so many other bits and pieces. Like I'll need redstone from villager trading or from a raid farm or both. I'll need quartz from piglin bartering, which means I'll need to build a proper gold farm, which I haven't done on Survival Guide Season 2 yet. Probably either like do some more strip mining or come up with a couple of cobblestone farm designs so that I can have enough cobblestone to build all the pistons and observers. Might even need to make a slightly larger iron farm. Although iron is not really the biggest issue when you need like 1 iron ingot per piston, right? And I've got an iron farm that I've had since maybe week 4 of that world. Didn't kill my villagers in that farm? No. And I have 2 villagers up there, but not 3, because the I think one of the villagers I took out of there to turn into a witch for the episode about lightning and lightning rods, but the remaining 2 villagers in there just need to be bred, which you could do pretty easily. Just throw a ton of carrots in there and maybe trade with them for a bit and wait. Pretty sure this is the only town called Dragon. That's pretty good. Bierstadt, Germany translates to Beer City. Yeah, uh-huh. Which seems pretty in character for Germany, I'd say. Oh my goodness. Sam, thank you so much for 20 gifted subs. He's back and he means business. Folks in the chat, as always, make sure you thank these very generous people gifting subs to the community. Just a 20 today. Just a casual. Drop a casual 20. As always, folks, you could also consider paying it forward. If you've received a gifted sub and you're feeling generous, you can consider gifting a sub to somebody else in the community. I was literally just about to say, I wonder if a wandering trader can spawn up here, and then I was going to turn around and be like, well, there's all of this grass around here he can spawn on. There's literally one right there. Hello, mate. What have you got? Respawn anchor, interesting. I like how the unlit respawn anchor becomes a lit respawn anchor when you have the mini block of it. Cut copper, of course. Unfortunately, no frog lights, which is kind of a shame. Shulker box, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm still looking for mini block frog lights to add to my frog light orchard. Nursing Geek, thank you for gifting that sub. Very kind of you. Is that a belated paying it forward? Well, that's super nice of you. Yeah, there's a few people sharing the slightly more unsavory town names. If you could refrain from doing that just because we're an all ages stream, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. The mods have been deleting a couple of them, and I don't want them to do any more hard work than they already do. Forgot this was a modded server. I was like, whoa, the Wandering Trader never brings me stuff that cool. It's more data packs than mods. There's the mods are all like cosmetic things, really, and like Matica. But yeah, that's a Vanilla Tweaks data pack. Is the mini block mod available for Bedrock? I'm pretty sure that Foxy No Tail has something similar now. If not identical, then at least somewhat similar. Sam gifting another sub, matching. I like that. Thank you. Gifting another sub to Paula. Possibly Paula. Would write into the chunk mail dispenser, but it's just a quick idea. Let me smelt tough into calcite. Well, tough is at least available abundantly, I suppose, but tough isn't renewable, is it? I also don't know from a geological perspective whether or not that works, and that's where my my argument for somebody wrote into the spawn chunks saying like, hey, why don't we have the option in vanilla Minecraft to smelt diorite into calcite? And I looked it up, and it turns out that it should really, if anything, be the other way around, because diorite is an igneous, it's like a volcanic rock, and calcite is like sedimentary, and so they're sort of from different groups of rock to begin with, but it kind of doesn't necessarily make sense that the two of them would be related that way. But if anything, calcite should be a component of diorite, not the other way around. I just want calcite slabs and stairs, dude. Same. It would be really nice to be able to do more with it, especially in combination with quartz, like having quartz slabs and stairs. But then you have to, if you're mixing quartz and calcite, you have to go back to just using exclusively quartz stairs to detail stuff. I would love there to be something else like that. And diorite you can do it with, but it does feel like a heavy contrast. Does quartz plus stone and such make sense then? I think that's more about, like, the composition of them. Like, if you added more quartz deposits in something, does it necessarily mean that you can turn diorite into andesite or granite? I don't know. How do you like having Foxy's rideable dolphins on Empires? I'm not super keen on needing rideable dolphins, but Like, on Empires, it wouldn't really make any sense for me because we're not near any oceans where I am. Obviously, Joey and Sausage would probably use it a lot more than I would. Stairs and slabs of concrete when? When Mojang decides that realism is more important than creativity, I guess. Like, I think one of the reasons they don't give you slabs and stairs in 16 colors is because they want people to try using materials that are slightly off the beaten path and aren't just like one solid color. Like, it seems like it'd make things too easy to build shapes out of certain specific colors, I guess. I don't know. We need a troll ore in the game. Pyrite, yeah, we need fool's gold. Sam, thank you for 50 gifted subs. Once again, folks, make sure you thank these very generous sub-gifters, spending their hard-earned money on you. Alright, where are we at with this? Yeah, I'm quite liking that. I think it needs to maybe go, like, up towards this area. So we'll try and, like... try and create this sort of ridge that goes up this way. Ye old dice goblin, good time zone to you. Number of times I've been straight up unable to make a building I want to because there aren't any color slabs. It's too high to count. It's restrictive and annoying. Depends on your approach to building, I suppose. But yeah, I can see it getting old for some people, but I don't know. I still think we're capable of much more than we give ourselves credit for. But I see it being the same sort of reasoning where they've in the past given reasons that we can't, like, attach lanterns to the sides of buildings, like they have to be hanging from something or placed on top of a block, but they can't be just like hanging out on the side of a wall, is because it encourages you to make different design choices and try and be more creative with certain things. Which is a philosophy I understand, even if I don't always agree. When going too far up, make it not that much of the natural feel as the mountain near it is a few blocks away and far lower than the height you're building at. I mean, not necessarily. Like, I'm re-landscaping more or less this whole area after a certain point, and what I'm going for is more like drama than realism and respect for the rest of the terrain. Like, I know my whole thing on Empires is preservation, but setting that aside just for the purposes of wanting to build something cool, I think part of the point here is wanting to, yeah, build something that looks like it's kind of got a flair for the dramatic in some places. Rule of cool wins out, always. Need a little bit more, like, erosion happening here, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe something like this, where perhaps it was connected at one point, but then the wind has, like, carved a section, a chunk through it. And then this can kind of be dangling down to meet that slightly. Come on, you can reach that. There we go. Getting there. Needs a little bit more shape to it. Needs something a little more shapy. Am I planning to build the castle that was in the picture earlier that I showed after I'm done landscaping? No. That was Corf Castle. That was, if anything, an example of something that I'm not going to build, because I want to build something that feels like it stood the test of time. I want it to feel a bit more maybe something closer to that. Yeah, I want it to feel like it's been made out of materials that were built to last. Free cam caught me off guard. Sorry, yeah, I do tend to break out into free cam when I want to take a look back at stuff now. Because as usual on Empires, like, the goal is much more one of creativity than it is of adherence to strictly vanilla gameplay, so I'm kind of cool with using free cam and popping out and flying around a little bit just to make stuff like this work. But yeah, I do like having stuff like that in there. It just needs to feel a bit more substantial than this. We can maybe go with that. Is free cam a mod? Yeah. It's part of Tweakaroo as well. But in this case, it's a standalone mod. I forget whose free cam it is, but the kind of thing that you can find on CurseForge, and there's multiple solutions for it. Building a castle on public whitelist SMP with a bunch of other people with the help of Matica. It's a schematic download online. Nice. Yeah, there's some very talented castle builders out there, so always super cool to see what people share with the community. Looking forward to both your castle and Scars. I'm hoping for two very different, very awesome castles. Yeah, I mean, I assume Scars is going to be very heavily Disneyland inspired. So he's going to have a lot of fairy tale touches to his, while mine is going to be a little bit more gothic, I suppose. Unless he decides he's doing gothic Disneyland, which would be awesome. But that doesn't quite seem to be the vibe for his Scarland stuff. Yeah, the real helpful aspect of free cam is just being able to look at stuff from different angles without having to just fly around and constantly turn, look, and twist and Plot twist, Scar's castle turns out to be a giant cat tree. I expect if you've got cats and you have like a Wendy House style like Disney playset or something, your cats would probably still enjoy that. Cats like being in stuff, on top of stuff. One of the YouTube channels we watch all the time is the one with the cat named Maru. And he likes being in stuff. All of the videos are just him wearing like a box as a hat and stuff, you know. He's just the cutest cat. One of many, I suppose, but still. Cats love defined spaces, yeah. Yeah, the cat would end up preferring the box that it came in. With the playset, but... Someone pranking him to turn it into a cat tree is a fun concept. Yeah, it could be. Lily Sky Moon, thank you for the 2 months. Welcome back. Hello to you. Love to see a 2-month resub because it means people are committed. It's always fun when people are like, I've subscribed for the first time, but then when they come back and resubscribe for that second month, that's them saying, I'm here for the long haul. One of my parents' cats sometimes crawls in. One of my cats sometimes crawls in my parents' bed to sleep during the day. Ours used to sleep in the bed quite a lot. Like some of the pictures I have of Pickwick, he's like, he got into the duvet cover, so he was like, he's not like underneath the duvet. He's like inside between the duvet cover and the actual like duvet itself. He was always a fairly clean cat, so we were sort of okay with it, but... When our cats were kittens, we'd weigh them by putting them in a bowl, and they would fall asleep instead of fleeing out of them at first chance, yeah. An ex of mine had giant feet like UK size 15 and had a cat that used to nap in his slippers. Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, when your footwear is basically a cat bed in itself, then that's pretty cute. Over here being allergic to cats, yeah, it's a shame. I'm lucky enough to not have any significant allergies. Like, there have been some years that I've gotten like what I presume is a little bit of hay fever, but even that is relatively mild, so I'm very lucky that way. I'm allergic to stuff being put on my face, but that's more just like an ongoing case of dermatitis than it is any kind of like allergy. It's just like my skin doesn't react well to stuff being put on it. But with animals, I've never really had any kind of issues. Have too many allergies, mostly for food. Yeah, I've got friends and occasional family members who have to be very careful about diets if they're celiac or whatever else. Shy skin, yeah, something like that. Why does this bit look like a screaming face? I'm allergic to Tide detergent, blueberries, and cats. I wonder if there's some kind of like chemical in common there. I expect there are several, but I wonder if there's any chemicals that are specifically the thing you're allergic to. Well, we've made a start. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today, folks, because we're going to wrap up the stream there. And I need to go back to babysitting David to make sure that any of the changes I can make will be functionally correct. So, we're going to wrap things up there. Thank you so much for hanging out on the stream today. Hope you all enjoyed. A little bit of a mixed bag today. Thank you all so much for hanging out. Special thanks to everybody supporting the stream. Let's see who's out here playing some Minecraft. Oh, I tell you what, Bruno is streaming from Respawn, which is a server I was mostly participating in. It's kind of taken a back seat now that I'm doing a bit more stuff on Empires again. But Respawn is a month-long hardcore project in which we have lives that are items in your inventory. And Bruno stole one of mine recently because he needed it. and felt like it, I guess. And I'd left it in a chest at the village that I was using as my base. So we're going to go and raid Bruno. He's currently wearing my face, so nothing will really change for you. And it looks like he's in the nether, maybe getting geared up with netherite. Yeah, he's at Y14. I presume he's looking for ancient debris. You can use your pixel hype emotes in the hashtag pixel raid to go say hi to Bruno. I'm going to resub over there for 21 months. So a little bit awkward that I'm resubbing to somebody with my own face, but there you go. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be back on Tuesday for another Minecraft stream. On Sunday, if you stop by 8-Bit Community here on Twitch, you'll find me playing Dungeons & Dragons with the usual crew. Tuesday will be my last stream before I go away, so if you're going to show up to any stream, make it that one. Thanks for hanging out, folks. I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye for now.